if anything, if you are not seeing it or whatever, just feel free to interrupt me so that I can fix it, but it should be good to go.
Yes, your screen is visible and you're audible as well.
Okay, cool. Let's get started then. All right, guys. Thank you for coming to this presentation. As you know, it's about sending email newsletters, which is a big thing these days. How to start one, how to monetize it if you decide to go down that route. First, just to give you a little bit of information about myself. My name is Drew Austin. I live in New York City. I write a weekly newsletter called Kneeling Bus, which is about cities, technology, and the interaction between the digital and physical worlds, which I've actually not been that good over time about describing to people what it's about. But I've been writing about this stuff and blogging about it for a decade or longer. My professional background is in urban planning and transportation planning. I've previously worked for Uber, the Chicago Transit Authority, and the Port Authority of New York. And I've been writing while working at those places. And recently I started spending more time writing, and this newsletter is a big part of that. So I want to tell you what my experience has been like and whatever lessons I've learned. I think I've learned some pretty good lessons about having a newsletter, what works and what doesn't. So I'd like to share that with you. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions. So if you have anything that I talk about that you're wondering about or anything that I don't answer, feel free to save that for the last part of this session and we can discuss. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. So just to start out, the reason I started a newsletter is because I always kind of wanted to write. I actually wanted to be a journalist when I was younger, and my career went in a different direction. But I realized after I'd been doing other stuff for a while that because of the internet, it's really easy to write, even if you're doing something else. You can do it on the side really easily. Because of the internet, it's really easy to build an audience. And I think the internet has enabled that through blogging historically, but more recently, newsletters are the best way to publish your writing on the internet. And I'm going to explain why in a minute. So to tell you a little bit about my newsletter, I started the newsletter 4 years ago. And for about 10 years before that, or 10 years since now, I've had a blog. My newsletter is called Kneeling Bus. It's on Substack, which you may have heard of. It's gotten a lot of attention recently. It's probably the most popular platform for writing a newsletter that is, personal, that is just one person writing and publishing stuff. There's other platforms like MailChimp that I actually used to be on, but MailChimp isn't really for writing a personal newsletter. It's more for marketing emails. So I switched over to Substack a year and a half ago in 2019. And then Substack makes it really easy to monetize your newsletters. So I always kind of thought I might do that eventually. I didn't know when I would do it. And about 6 months ago, I decided it was time to introduce paid subscriptions. So I did that in July of last year, and I've had paid subscriptions for 6 months. The reason I started a newsletter in the first place, I was pretty happy writing a blog and just posting to the blog. But the thing about blogs, now that the whole internet has kind of shifted to be more about social media, is that if you're just posting links to what you wrote on social media, it's really hard to get people to actually see them and read it. I mean, even if you have a lot of followers, which I didn't, you write something and it goes up on the blog. 10 years ago, people might have actually been checking your blog directly on the internet, but more and more people are just on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And if something's not getting their attention there, they're not going to see it. So the advantage of a newsletter is, you're sending your post directly to somebody's inbox. That's a huge advantage because people actually do read their email, and that'll probably always be the case. So right now, I think once I started writing the newsletter, I realized that every time I sent one out, even if it was going to like 30 people, 15 to 20 of them would open it pretty quickly. And it would be really hard to get those same 30 people to find out about my blog post if I just posted it on a website. So that was really good advice, and I was really happy to have taken it 4 years ago, and it's been a good ride since then. My blog, my newsletter is pretty much just me writing about whatever I feel like writing about. So I started it, and no one really subscribed when I started it. I was kind of just doing it while I worked at Uber in my spare time. This is the first issue I ever sent. As you can see, it's really short, pretty informal. I just wanted to get started. So I knew no one was reading it, so there was no pressure. So I just kind of started sending these little updates about whatever I wanted to talk about. This is the one where I'm kind of explaining what my newsletter was going to be, but that only went to like 8 people, and probably only 5 of them actually read it at most. So again, it was like a good way to get started because there was no pressure. Today, my newsletter has about 3,000 subscribers, and about 200 of them are paying subscribers. So that brings in about, I think right now the annual revenue is about $8,000. So it's not a full-time job by any means, but it is a nice source of revenue, and it's something that I'd be doing either way. So if you're doing it, you might as well, if you want to, see if you can get paid a little bit for it, because it is something that takes up some of my time. And I would like it to eventually be something that I can do relatively full-time. I'm a freelancer now. I left Uber a while back, and I've been doing freelance consulting and writing. So this is actually, if you do want to write professionally, this is a great way to make money relative to other ways you can make money as a freelance writer. So it's, the goal is to keep building my subscriber base, which has been steadily growing. Like I said, I only monetized it 6 months ago. And I think that it will continue to grow. And eventually I think it can be something that I do as like a full-time occupation. So let me talk a little bit just about like what your perspective should be on starting a newsletter. I think there are good and bad reasons to start a newsletter. Like I said, I started a newsletter just because I love writing and I love blogging, and I wanted another outlet to do that. I think that's the best reason to start a newsletter. There's a lot of hype around, a lot of high-profile journalists have recently left their well-paying jobs at traditional big publications and started their own newsletters. I do not think that earning money is a good reason to start a newsletter. It's a good thing to do if you have a newsletter already and it's going well, but you shouldn't start your newsletter with the expectation of making a lot of money right away. The people that have successfully done that are already famous. If you're already famous, if you already have a huge audience from something else, you're a big YouTube star or TikTok star or whatever, you could probably successfully start a newsletter and have a lot of income right off the bat. But as my example shows, I actually had a pretty decent following for my newsletter, and I'm happy with the success rate of what the money I'm making now, but I wouldn't have been able to make any of it if I didn't already spend a couple of years building up, a little bit of a following and making people subscribe because they actually like what I wanted to read. So focus on the writing, focus on the content, focus on making it as good as it can be, and that will be the source of all the future success that your newsletter has. But I like I said, I think writing a newsletter right now is the best way to publish your writing on the internet. It's the best way to get people to read it, and it's the best way to get people's attention. And I think that'll be the case for a while. It's not a sure thing by any means. There's always a possibility that something else, like blogging 10 years ago was the big thing, and then blogging kind of stopped working as well, just because there's other ways that people consume information online. But I think newsletters are good right now. The big risk I see with newsletters is that there are too many of them, and people's inboxes are just full of newsletters, and they can't read them all, and they start unsubscribing. But I think it's still the golden age, so don't worry about that right now. A lot of things, it feels like it's too late, like their time has already passed, but it's really early for things like this. And not that many people still have newsletters, even if it seems like it. So don't hesitate to start one if you're thinking about it. Um, so let's talk a little bit about how to start a newsletter. Like I said with mine, I already had a blog. I'd been writing. I didn't write consistently, but one thing about a newsletter is that if you start one, it kind of pressures you to write on a consistent basis, whether that's once every week, once every 2 weeks. Some people send one every day, whatever works for you. But I think the good thing about a newsletter is that you're emailing people, and even if they don't, they probably don't care as much as you might imagine. But it's a good way to hold yourself accountable. I found that knowing that people would get an email directly from me once a week kind of caused me to take it more seriously and to be like, I can't miss a week. I'll miss one every once in a while, but I'll never miss 2 weeks in a row. And I think it's just a good way to make myself take it really seriously as something I have to do consistently. So starting out, obviously, you need a topic or theme or a reason to start a newsletter. I'm assuming that if you're coming to this session, you have some interest in starting a newsletter. Maybe you even already have started one or have one. So, the way to define your topic, I can only give you so much guidance on this, but think about what you're interested
from
in.
the audience if they already have a newsletter or what they interest, like some of the answers only.
Say that again.
Yeah, I was asking that maybe we can ask from the audience itself that if they have a newsletter or what interest actually they have in newsletters. So I would request everyone to share their views on newsletter and why they are attending this session, because like newsletter was an new topic for me, so it interests me. And here is an answer. I'm thinking of starting a newsletter to share my experience in digital marketing. That's great, Amrita.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's a great, because you have knowledge, so why not to share with others? Any other answers?
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, Simran.
Hello. I want to say that I have a confusion, like I am a book blogger and also I am a law student. So I want to start two newsletters. So for that I should create two separate websites for this, or I can continue in one website only.
I would recommend one to start out with. I think that one thing about newsletters is you don't know how much of a time commitment it will be to do one consistently. So my recommendation to anyone who's thinking about starting one or two would be to start with one and then figure out how to incorporate the second one, just so you can get used to some of the aspects of it, like fitting it into your schedule, sending it out on a consistent basis, etc. But if the two topics have a lot of overlap, then it might actually be better to combine them. And that way people who subscribe to one will get both of them. So that would be my suggestion. I guess the only reason not to do that would be if it's two quite different topics and you think one of the topics would be not relevant to a lot of the people that are subscribing to the other topic, then you can keep them separated. But yeah, my recommendation is start with one first and then move to the second one.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Hope your doubt is cleared, Simran. If you have, you can.
Thank you.
Okay. And yeah, rest are new to newsletters and they don't have one, but they like Deblina want to start a newsletter someday. She's here just to gain knowledge about it. So that's amazing.
Great.
And yeah, we can move forward with the presentation.
Okay, great. So I think just the first example of digital marketing is a great example that I'll use to talk about this. So you're kind of looking for obviously if you want to write, then you probably have stuff you're interested in that you've thought about writing about, but we all have things that we know more about than everybody else, our own areas of expertise. A lot of times it's what we do for work, or it might just be a hobby. Like a lot of people have newsletters about cooking. People have newsletters about sports. Nothing's off the table. Anything is a good topic. The most important thing is you know about it, you're passionate about it, and you can write about it. That's how blogging is, and that's how newsletters are too. So don't be afraid to start something that other people have already done. Like I write a newsletter about city planning and technology. Those are both topics that a lot of people write about, and a lot of people have newsletters about. So I'm aware that I'm doing something that other people do too, but it's okay because there's a lot of people out there in the world, and a lot of people want to read more than one person talking about something. So think about what you want to write about, but also don't worry too much about getting it perfect, because you're going to figure a lot of this out as you go. So the next step, while you're thinking about the topic, you choose a platform. So I mentioned Substack already. I'd say Substack is the most popular tool for sending newsletters today. The best thing about it is that it was built specifically for these types of newsletters. I mentioned already MailChimp, which is what I started on. MailChimp is a really popular platform for marketing copy. So if you're a company or a brand, and you want to, send regular emails to your customers, it's good for that. MailChimp lets you do a lot more formatting, and stuff like that. But it's not as easy to, if you want to monetize that and turn on paid subscriptions, MailChimp doesn't really let you do that. You need to do that using a third-party service. So I recommend Substack. Substack also takes care of a lot of the formatting for you, so you don't have to mess with that. And it's getting better all the time. And I think that on Substack, people sign up at a higher rate because Substack is good with discovery. They allow people to find your newsletter online. So I actually started gaining subscribers at a much faster rate once I moved over to Substack. Then there's others. I mentioned Ghost. That's kind of like Substack, but it's nonprofit. And then there's many others. Like a lot of them, I've never even really gotten familiar with, so I couldn't speak on them. But I think Substack and MailChimp are the two big ones that you'd be choosing between. And then some other things to think about before getting started. When are you going to send it? How often will you send it? How long will it be? And then formatting. I mentioned the formatting on Substack is standardized, so you don't have to deal with fonts and stuff like that, which I think is really good because I just want to focus on the writing. But if you like tweaking the formatting and making your own visual style, then you might consider MailChimp just because it lets you do that. You can actually control the HTML. But the reason these things are important is because, once people start receiving your newsletter, consistency is good. People will like it if it comes at a predictable time. So I always send my newsletter on Friday. I just started doing that from the beginning, and I thought it was a good time for me. It was a good time in my schedule. But it seemed like a good time for people to read it. So that's what I started doing. But some people actually sort of do analysis of when do people open the most emails, and they try to send it then. Some people want to send theirs in the morning, et cetera. And length can vary, but I think in my own experience is that people like it to be a little bit shorter. That depending on what you're doing, that might not be the case for you. But I always keep mine to 500 words. And I think people appreciate that. So don't take that as a definitive pronouncement, but that's been my experience. And then the most important step is to actually start. So I can't urge you enough to just get started with a newsletter now, even if you want to. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. Don't wait till you have the perfect idea. I started my newsletter before I felt like I was ready to, just because I wanted to. And like I said, there was nobody really subscribed to my newsletter when I started. I just told 10 friends and family, and I felt like that was better for me to actually feel comfortable sending it, because you wouldn't want to have 1,000 subscribers right away if you're just starting to write and figure out what you're doing. And as you send these newsletters, you'll get a better sense of how it's actually going and what you should talk about. You might get feedback from your audience, but having subscribers even just a few, it will actually motivate you to write the newsletter and send it. Like if you tell your friends and family that you're starting a newsletter and then they never get it from you, they'll be like, hey, what happened to that newsletter you told me about? You don't want that to happen. So it's a good balance between having, some subscribers and not. If you've already been writing for a while, you might feel more comfortable, growing the subscriber base faster. So you might want to promote it more. I started by telling some people I knew, but then I posted to social media. I didn't even have that many, followers on social media, but, every little bit helps. And, don't worry if your subscriber rate isn't growing that fast. I think it can take a while, but it could also be really fast for you. Like for me, it actually was slow, but over time, I feel like I grew the subscriber base just by making the newsletter itself better. And eventually, if you're doing something good, then people will tell their friends, or you'll have something to talk about when you meet people, like professionally or personally. One other thing that I found worked really well is actually emailing people whose writing I liked and telling them that I had a newsletter that I thought they would like because they were, similar to me. And sometimes they really do like it. And that's a good way to get someone's attention. Then they might even promote your work or let you guest post on their newsletter. Those are the kind of like later stage steps that work really well. Guest posting on other people's sites or newsletters is a way to get outside of your own zone and have people find out about you. So those are all ways to grow your subscriber base. But I think my big point here is don't put too much pressure on yourself. And if you're doing this because you want to write and have an audience, like, it's great whether it's 50 people or 500 people or 5,000 people. And, eventually you may have goals. Like I do have goals every year of like how many new subscribers I want to get, but I didn't worry too much about that at the beginning. That's more after you're already settled into the process. So, and again, producing the best newsletter you can is the best way to build an audience in the long run. That sounds kind of like a cliche. A lot of people say that, and you can kind of like be skeptical of whether it's true or not, but I do think that's true. There's definitely hacks that you can use to get little bumps in subscribers, and some people really do focus on marketing their newsletter effectively. But I think that ultimately the newsletter has to be good and something people want to read, or else the other stuff doesn't really matter. So I recommend spending most of your time making the newsletter and making the writing good. And marketing certainly matters, but you have to have something good because people will sign up. And if they don't like what they see once they sign up, then they might unsubscribe. So focus on that. I mentioned obviously good writing, and having a newsletter is a way to make your writing better if you're trying to get better at it. So don't worry about whether your writing's good enough. Just start, and the more you write, the better you get. Like I said, consistency matters. I think people like to get the newsletter at a consistent frequency, like once a week. If it's just kind of clear what that rate is, then that's what matters the most. And I think brevity matters, but not necessarily. It kind of depends on your own situation. So having a longer newsletter might actually make sense for you, depending on what topic you're discussing. And then a few more tips. Like I already said, don't worry about subscriber count. Set it consistently. And I think the most important thing after starting is don't stop. A lot of newsletters start and they send like 3 issues, and then they just stop because, people, maybe they didn't realize it was harder than they thought it would be, or they didn't have time, or they just ran out of ideas or whatever. But I think it's important to keep going once you start, and there will be a period where the initial novelty wears off and it starts to feel harder to think of ideas. And that's okay. I think that's really normal, but you kind of have to be ready to push through that rough patch. And I think it's important to keep sending the newsletter at whatever schedule you've decided. if you're serious about it, because it is really easy to stop once you've sent like 3 or 4. So just be aware of that. And then finally, let's talk about subscriptions. So like I said, I about 6 months ago, I made it possible to subscribe to my newsletter. The price is $50 a year or $5 a month, which is actually the minimum price that Substack lets you charge. So I might have even charged less, but Substack doesn't make that possible. So you may feel like you're asking for too much if you monetize your newsletter, but you might be surprised. And some people actually charge a lot more than I do. I didn't think it was appropriate for mine, but if your newsletter is like professionally oriented, then people might find it more easy to justify spending money. Like if you're talking about digital marketing, other people that work in that field would probably pay a pretty good amount to read it, just because they can actually get something out of it for their own job and make more money themselves by reading your newsletter. I had my newsletter for 3 years before I introduced paid subscriptions. So, and I actually wasn't even sure if I was ready to do it when I did it, but it's one of those things where you should do it before you have to. Like I have other sources of income, so I didn't need it to become my full-time income. I think it's hard to like put yourself in that kind of spot if you're trying to make money off of it. It's better to just do it early and see how it's going without having to worry too much about it. The rule of thumb that I hear from a lot of people is you can expect 10% of your free subscribers to eventually pay for subscriptions. That might vary in different situations, and right now I've got about 6% of my subscribers paying. So I think it's growing. So I think it will actually get to 10%. But once you get to that point, then it's more about growing the total number of people and having more people find out about your newsletter. And then within your newsletter, you can kind of tell people to subscribe if they've been reading it for a while and they like it. Because ultimately, I mean, you are putting time into this. You're writing and sending something to people. And it's fine to do that for free, but it's not unreasonable to give people the option to pay you. So don't feel bad about that. One important thing if you introduce paid subscriptions is to think about what the product is that you're offering. So I sent a newsletter on Friday to everybody, but when I introduced paid subscriptions, I started sending a second newsletter earlier in the week to only the paid subscribers. And there's a paywall on that. So if you don't pay, you can't actually read it. I think that you don't have to do that, but in general, it's easier to make the case for why people should pay you if you're giving them something additional. Another popular approach that people do if they introduce paid subscriptions is having some kind of community around the newsletter. Like they have a Slack group or a Discord group that everybody can hang out in and talk to each other, either about topics that the newsletter covers or just anything. But there's a lot of different things that people do. Some people sell merchandise like t-shirts and stuff. There's a lot of different things you can do for people who pay, but, and some people actually collect paid subscriptions and don't change anything. They just keep sending the one newsletter. So there's that option too. But the best thing for me about monetizing my newsletter is that now I can kind of think of it as a business, and everything I do that makes people subscribe to it and that makes it better, I can think of in terms of money. So if I get 10 more subscribers, then that's, it's easier to justify that when there is some revenue involved, even if it's not yet a full-time thing for me. I can invest more time in making the newsletter better. I can spend more time researching. I can spend more time marketing, because when it was free, it was more just a side thing. It was like a hobby. But now I can think of it as a small business that's right now a side hustle, but might eventually be a bigger part of my professional life. And this is a chart of my paid subscriber growth. So like I said, it's a little over 8,000 right now, but when I launched it, as you can see, the number goes straight up, because most of the people that subscribe will, like all the people that already read your newsletter, when you first roll out paid subscriptions, you can really make a big push and get a lot of them to subscribe right away. And then after that, it'll be a slower growth. But the beginning is when you get a pretty big bump. So that's just kind of having a sense of how it grows. I had a little slow down recently over the holidays, but a lot of it just depends on how much you market it and promote it to your audience yourself. So that's my presentation. I covered a lot. Hopefully I gave you some information that was useful and that you think you could apply to your own situation. But I'm happy to answer questions for as long as we have available now. So if anybody has any questions they want to ask, fire away.
Yeah. I guess, Simran, you can unmute yourself and ask your question if that is comfortable to you. Actually, you have wrote a long question.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes, audible. I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. I want to ask that some people, what they do, they collect articles from different people in their same niche, and then they collaborate all the articles in one newsletter, and then they send it to the people. So whether we should start like this, or whether we should publish a solo newsletter in which we write only our article or only our stuff.
That's a really good question. I actually should have talked about that. A lot of people do have newsletters where they just collect links for things that they've read that are good and send those out. And that's actually a really popular style of newsletter. I think probably half of them, at least, that I read are like that. And I'm probably a little bit... Go ahead.
I am seeing this like it is a trend, like people collect the matter from others and then they publish and compile it and then they send it over, and they are making good amount of money by all this.
Yeah, there are some very good newsletters that are like that, because you're offering curation if you do that. People want to know what's good to read, and if you collect them and you've read a lot of stuff, that's a very good way to do a newsletter. I think I talked more about that.
And also they do one thing, that they ask the articles from the person and then they also charge from them to give the articles. Really? There is a literary magazine which sells a newsletter. So what he does that he goes to the author, he says that we will do your promotion. So they take a charge of 10,000 or whatever the charge is, and then they collaborate and then they sell, and that is having 20,000 subscribers internationally. So they are gaining a lot, like 44 lakh, 5 lakh is their monthly turnover by that. So that was the huge thing which I discovered when I saw this thing.
That's a really good strategy. Yeah. As you pointed out, like, there's a lot of things like that you can do once you have a lot of subscribers. Like, they can charge people to get in the newsletter once they have a big base, because they know a lot of people are going to see it. I'd say that's like a later stage move, but that's really interesting. To your original question, I think like links and like compiling and curating links is a really viable way for a newsletter to work.
Yes, true.
Yes.
Yes, so my question is answered. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we have another question that what do you usually write about and how do you structure it? It's about your newsletter.
Yeah, so I write about technology and city planning. So the overlap, I kind of write about how the internet is changing cities and how the internet changes physical space. Sometimes it's more just about technology, but the way I structure it, it's usually 3 paragraphs and then a few links at the end that are about relevant topics. So I'll keep it between 500 and 700 words, and it'll just be 3 paragraphs, a short essay about something I've observed in the last week. So, last week I wrote a newsletter about freeways and how, the way we use freeways is sort of like a technological space, is kind of like how we use the internet. It's sort of hard to explain what that is about. if you haven't read it, but I've kind of, again, like figured out exactly what I talk about over time. You know, I've sent like
share the link here and we all can have a look at it.
Yes, definitely. I'll post the link in the chat in a second. I'll do that right now, actually. And I don't do much, like, I don't put any like images in really or anything, but some people do like a lot of images in addition to the text, and that can be a good way to do it. I just posted it in the chat.
Yeah, we have another question that Ghost seems to be paid. Can you recommend some free resources to start a newsletter writing with? So Substack is free. I think there's also one called TinyLetter that's free. And then MailChimp is free if you have less than 1,000 subscribers. So I never actually paid on MailChimp because I switched over before I even had 1,000 subscribers. But that's like a good thing to be aware of, you know. In Substack, if you start collecting paid subscriptions, they take a 10% cut. That's how they make money. But you don't pay to start on Substack. It's free until you start charging people, and then they just take a percentage of the revenue that you earn. So I found that pretty appealing because there's kind of no risk. Like you don't have to pay to start. And I actually didn't know that Ghost was paid, but that's, you know, I haven't used Ghost. I've used MailChimp and Substack. So those are, and there's other ones too. It's kind of the landscape's always changing, but I recommend Substack for that reason too. It's free to start on Substack. Yeah, hope your question is answered, Amrita. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we have the question that I'm totally new to newsletter. So how is newsletter different from a blog? This is question from Naima.
Yeah, I would say it's actually not that different. It's almost exactly the same. The only difference is that you email it out to people instead of posting it to a website. And that's really, that's an important difference. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, it changes how you reach your audience and who reads it. I think that because people are in the habit of checking their email, you know, throughout the day, if you send an email newsletter, then like people are just way more likely to see it because there's so much stuff on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Like it's all going by so fast that if you post something just on there, it's gone by the time a lot of people would actually check. But with email, you know, people actually try to reply to or deal with all their emails. So if you're sending something by email, but the actual content is not different. Like everything that I send in my newsletters could be a blog post too. And if you look at Substack, the posts that you email actually also are organized on a URL as a kind of blog format. So the short answer is that it's basically the same. You just distribute it differently.
Yeah, hope your question is answered. We don't have any more questions. Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
I don't know what the problem is actually. I can't hear you. So yeah. We have a question that can I publish a monthly newsletters on book review, or what new things I can add? Secondly, I am a lawyer too, so if I can manage. Okay, I guess this question is from Simran only, right? Yeah, okay.
So the question is just, can I do that? The monthly newsletter about book reviews?
Book review and what new things I can add. This was the question.
Yeah, so I think monthly is good. Like a lot of people do send, if that's the time you can commit to, I think that's the most important thing. Sending it monthly and have it be consistent would be a good way to do it. And would this be like personal book reviews, like just books that you've read, or would it be professionally oriented?
Like book reviews are basically what we have read, or actually this was a question from audience only, so I am just telling it to you. So yeah, like we can do that in a newsletter, right?
Yes, definitely. That'd be a very good newsletter topic. Like a lot of people have newsletters where they review books, or it's kind of like a literary, like review newsletter. I think that's a really good topic.
Okay. And a person asked, how do you reach out to people, like for the subscribers and for the newsletters?
So that's changed over time. Like I said, the first year, like in 2017, I didn't really have anyone no one followed me on Twitter, and I didn't really have many channels that I could use to promote myself. So I just told people that I knew about it. And then like one of the best things that I did was I just emailed some people who had blogs and newsletters that I liked that had bigger audiences. And I was kind of writing stuff that I thought was similar to what they did. So I was like, I just told them about it, and I emailed them, and I said, hey, you might like what I'm doing because it's close to what you're doing. And one or two of them like actually liked it, and then they tweeted about it or linked to it in their newsletter. And then I got more followers from that. And it was good followers who were interested in things that me and the other person were both writing about. Once I had the newsletter for more time, there was a little bit more word of mouth. Like people will tell their friends. You can even, I don't always do this and I don't know how well it works, but some people in their newsletters say like, please share this or please tell a friend. And that can get you some additional subscribers. And then if you link to your social media in the newsletter, you can kind of get more subscribers to follow you on other platforms. And then if you kind of like do the cross-platform promotion, then you can kind of build all of your followings simultaneously.
Okay. So yeah, he also asked that other than Substack, do you have a blog where people can subscribe you?
Yeah, I actually do. I haven't written on it for like 4 or 5 years. All my writing is basically on the newsletter now. So I can give you the link to my personal website. I need to fix the blog, but it's more like old posts. But I'll throw that in here. So yeah, most of my writing now is on the newsletter, but neelandbus.net, I'm kind of in the process of rebuilding that, but other writing will be on there eventually.
Okay, yeah. We can go for this like site. Yeah, we have a question that right now I just want to create a community of people using newsletter, and after 6 months I will be releasing a product like book or something. Any tips to be able to fetch more people, more number of people in my community so that I can make higher sales once I live my products?
That's a good question. So having a newsletter, like for a goal of promoting something else, my best advice for that would be, make sure the newsletter is about whatever the book's about. So if you're writing a book about a certain topic, then having the newsletter also be about that topic would be the most effective way to promote the book, because people who sign up, like if you're writing, to use the example earlier, if you're writing about digital marketing and the book is about digital marketing, then you want to think about who's going to sign up for the newsletter and are they the target audience for the book as well. So make sure that the topics are aligned. And then beyond that, just promote it as much as you can. Like I think it's hard to build an audience quickly, but depending on your own situation, you might be able to do that really effectively. And having a newsletter is a great way to promote other things that you do once you've got a little bit of an audience. So yeah, I'd give that a shot, but just try to get as many people to subscribe as you can, and then you'll have more people to promote the book to, obviously.
We have the question that is it recommended to write one newsletter for more than one topic?
You can, yeah. I mean, if you I'd say my newsletter is kind of about a couple of topics that I sort of combine together. Just think about, I always try to think about who's subscribing and what they want to see, and if it's two very different topics, then maybe there's not that many people that are interested in both of them. But maybe there are. That could actually be a great way to set yourself apart, is I'm the only person who writes about these two things together. But if it's two things where you're sending completely different newsletters about two different topics, maybe just consider how many people want to read about both topics, or maybe people want to just read about one or the other. It kind of depends what the topics are and how you write about, history and tech, which I see in the chat as the example. I think that's a really awesome topic. If you combine them together, there's no limits or rules. Whatever you think is an interesting thing to write about is valid. And there's a good chance that you're the best person to write about a topic like that if you're doing it. So be creative, and just know that you can combine things.
Yeah, so basically exploring the things and seeing what works out for us.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question that how frequently do you send out newsletter per week?
So I send the free newsletter once a week on Friday, and then I send a second newsletter for paid subscribers on Wednesday or earlier in the week. But before I started paid subscriptions, I just sent once per week on Friday.
Yeah, I hope all your questions are cleared. If anyone has any questions, you can let us know, or else we can end this meeting. We can end the session. Yeah. Yes, please. We have a question. You can unmute and ask. It's not that you have to write only. You can unmute as well.
I see the question is, can you do affiliate marketing via newsletter? I have started to hear about people doing that. I've never done that, but people do. Once you have a lot of subscribers, then there are people that get those kinds of deals set up and do affiliate marketing. And I think you have to have. It doesn't make sense until you have a certain number of subscribers, probably. But I do hear about people with bigger newsletters doing affiliate marketing.
Hope your question is answered, and I guess we can end this meeting. What do you think?
That's great. I see one more question just came in. What's the best way to collect emails? I guess I should have pointed that out. So with newsletters, it's sort of you sort of want people to voluntarily subscribe. You don't want to sign people up. That may be obvious or not, I don't know, but I found that the best way to get people signed up was early on. It was just telling people that I knew, or posting to social media is always a good way to go. And you might have to post a lot because people won't see things. So I've had people that have followed me on Twitter for a year that didn't know I had a newsletter because I didn't post enough about it. You just have to keep telling people, your friends, you should tell them, they won't necessarily know that you have a newsletter unless you tell them. So just don't be afraid to tell people. And if they seem interested, then they probably will sign up. And if you have a personal website or whatever social media profiles, put the link to the newsletter in those profiles so that people will be able to sign up when they check your profile. And it definitely strengthens your personal brand. I mean, I think it's the best way to show what you know about or what you're interested in and talk about it in an interesting way. I actually think it's a lot better than social media in some ways. Thank you.
All enjoyed the session, and I guess we can end this session now. If you have any feedback, any questions, you can write in the chat box. Or first of all, thank you so much to you for coming to the show and sharing your knowledge. And
thanks. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I had a really good time doing this, and it was really fun talking about something that I really am excited about. So hopefully you guys, if you're thinking about a newsletter, hope this encourages you to get started. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me through social media or email. My website that I shared in the chat has my email address and social media info. So
I guess we can end the session, and thank you all for attending the session, and have a good night, and maybe have a good day to you there.
Yeah, just starting out the day here.
Okay. Yeah, have a good day, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.